Hey, everybody. Sorry, we're a couple minutes late. We had some. We were trying to get everything set up backstage here at the at Accademia Giallo. At some, I guess, last minute business before class started, but class has officially begun. I still have to get a bell. But today we are. It's a bit of an art class, as I teased on social media early, because we're going to be painting with the strange color of your body's tears, and that's color with a U. So this is a European joint. Um, But today, here with me, unfortunately, John Kitley could not join us from the crypt, but we're going to send our love his way. But I do have some additional, very talented, very patient faculty here with me. I am, of course, Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat, the humble student in Accademia Giallo, and our excellent educators are Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC. I didn't forget who you were. It's just I got a weird StreamYard pop-up on my side. I'm like, what is that?
I forget who I am all the time.
What was his name again? Dr. something.
Only I could read that label.
Wow. I'm you know what this is like. AC.
I do.
I need a producer. Brian Martinez of the Giallo Room. And you are wearing the Giallo Room shirt, and I can't see through it this time. Was it that shirt, or was it the one from before? Because I think it was last month's episode.
Right.
Keen viewers may have been able to notice that there was a poster of, was it the City of the Living Dead?
Yeah,
it was showing through the letters of Giallo Room, which really creeped us out after the show because we couldn't see that poster was nowhere to be seen on Brian's computer or the wall facing him or anything. It just showed up mysteriously. Perfect for Halloween.
Well, I have a funny little story for that, actually.
Well, let's get to it.
So for whatever reason, I don't know if this StreamYard thing is connected to Zoom, but Zoom, like years ago, I think around like 2020 when the pandemic was happening, like I was in a lot more of these podcast things, and for whatever reason, I set the little settings with like green screen mode.
Yep.
And then I put in like just a default City of the Living Dead background, just because I think it was Halloween during that particular show or whatever. And I just never thought to take it off or whatever. So I don't know if like carrying on over to StreamYard.
That's weird.
Yeah, like it just keeps the settings or something. I don't know. but that's like I went in there just before I popped on today, and lo and behold, I had like the settings and the old City of the Living Dead background that I put on in another computer. So it's not even on this freaking computer. So I don't know like what the hell's going on.
AI. AI is there for you.
Is that a thing yet? AI, Captain? Because that's where I thought you were going with this.
Oh,
but I'm elated. There's a scientific explanation for it, and also a bit of mystery. This is good.
Yes, which is a great segue into whatever we watched for this episode.
Let's start with another mystery. First of all, we got to say, hi, Jonas Hallberg. How you doing?
Hi, Jonas.
What's up, Jonas?
Glad you could be here. I don't remember, as with many of these things, I have horrible amnesia because there's too much going on. I don't remember how we got to talking about this movie, who suggested it, why. Do you guys remember? Because I'm very curious.
I don't.
I think we were talking about like the elements that make a Giallo, and then it's like, hey, there's an entire movie about said things, and we hadn't seen it yet. And I think it's
an entire subgenre of like these neo-Gialli.
And I've only seen this once before, and I remember it being kind of an exercise in style, and I was kind of curious to go back and check it out again and see what could be gleaned, if any, of a narrative.
Did you understand it this time around?
Oh, totally. I mean, it makes total sense.
I'll confess, it's been such a crazy day, and I watched this morning that I had meant to zip on over to Wikipedia to see if there was a plot synopsis.
There's no plot.
Wait, you mean on Wikipedia or just?
I went to Wikipedia, and there is no real it's the same kind of like teaser that you see on like IMDb for the description.
I'm actually pulling it up right here, and it says plot, and then you click it, and it says good luck.
Or as they might say in France, bon chance. All right. So I'm glad to know that I'm not alone. I'm curious, Brian, had you seen this before? Or is this your first
Oh
time?
yeah, no, yeah. Years ago when this first came out, I was doing a little horror blog called Film Deviant, and I reviewed it for that. And then once the Giallo Room kind of came into play or whatever, I did another little thing for that with the Baron. And so like I've seen it a couple times, and ever since I first watched it, it was always one of those things where, because I myself did sort of a neo Giallo, homage, as you will, like a little short film. And I think I remember around that time, maybe from 2011 to like 2019 or something, there was just a string of neo Jolly that was coming out left and right. Some from Argentina, which I really, really like.
Mhm.
Some from, various other countries, getting into the mix in terms of like putting their, whatever ethnic spin on this great Italian, genre that we all love. So this was one of them. This came from France, I believe. And
Belgium.
Oh, Belgium. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
But it's in French.
It is.
So it's funny because when I first watched it, I was like, wow, what kind of Giallo orgasm was this? Like that's basically what it is. It's a big fetishistic Giallo, big giant stew of just like a fun house of Giallo elements in this film. But it's done beautifully. Like I think it's I think you guys alluded to it when we first hopped on. It's like this artistic explosion of this genre that, at the time people were like sort of talking a lot more about it back, and I would say in that previous decade than they are now, because I don't see as many of these films coming out anymore. But I'm glad that this one exists.
Yeah.
Well, to that point, I wonder, and maybe this is an entirely separate show, but how successful were those Jolly? I mean, if you're saying there was a period of like 9 years or 8 years when there
Well,
was a kind of an international explosion, I'm wondering if people were like, hey, this would be kind of cool to put out, but then no one went to see them. So you're like, okay, it's dead. We're going to go back to comic book movies or whatever.
yeah, no, it's nowhere near the caliber of comic book movies or whatever. But
Sure.
like, it's definitely like its own little niche thing. Like even back when I first discovered it myself, it was like, it's not like there were as many resources back then, and certainly the companies putting out re-releases were far and few in between. They were definitely out there, but nothing as it is now, where you see like a Severin box set, or Vinegar Syndrome has their own box set, for Christ's sakes. Like it's a lot more well known now. But even so, I think what's his name? God damn it! I hate when we do this, because like the second you hit live, like you just forget everything.
Yeah.
Edgar something.
Ellen Poe. Yes. Sorry.
What did he do? This person.
Soho. The hell is his name?
Oh, Edgar Wright.
Edgar Wright. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Last Night in Soho.
Thank you. Like he put out something fairly recently, and that didn't like set the world on fire. And that's Edgar Wright. Like Edgar Wright, I think he's a really well-known director,
Yeah.
filmmaker. So whatever he attaches his name to, people pay attention. He put this one out, and it had a little bit of a buzz, but it wasn't necessarily like, oh my God, everybody needs to see this.
It wasn't Shaun of the Dead.
Right.
Well, but
So-
that was very much critically acclaimed, but
Mhm.
that was 2021, I think. And
Right.
I
Sounds
I
right.
hate to go back to that crutch, but I honestly think it might have been like kind of a pandemic. Like, we're going to put this movie out in theaters.
Sure.
How many people are
sure.
really going to go see it? Even though it's Edgar Wright, it's also this weird kind of,
Yeah.
jolly light thing. So
Well, I
Yeah.
also feel like, that's the thing. Like it wasn't aimed toward a mass audience.
Right.
And I think that's kind of what Brian's alluding to, is the fact that yes, there were a lot of these like Neo Giallo tributes and spins. We had the Astron 6 one with the editor.
hmm
There was just a lot of like attention being put on the Gialli. But yeah, I think it was for those niche fans. I don't think it was ever for a mass audience. I don't think we've had a Giallo that's really hit a mass audience in quite a while. So, I mean, again, I think it's there for the fans, but it's still kind of an exercise in nostalgia / homage.
Did you like this film, AC?
So I had seen Amer, which was their kind of, they had an anthology where it was like they were doing like little tributes to different subgenres, and the final one was a tribute to Giallo. And then this one came out a couple of years later. I think that was 2011. This was 2013, which means we're celebrating a 10-year anniversary, which is wild that this came out 10 years ago. But having been to the Brussels Film Festival, I knew about the buzz around Bruce Forzani and Hélène Cattet. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm excited. And I think, as I said earlier, like this one's very much like an exercise in formalism. It's like, how many of these elements can we put in? And it reminded me, somebody wrote somewhere that it's a combination of like De Palma precision and Argento, because it's like you've got De Palma doing like these things that are just so intricate and so you said the word, Brian, fetishistic. Like things get so much attention placed on them that they almost lose any narrative. It becomes purely about the cinematic experience, what you're being seen or what you're seeing, what you're hearing, how it's being presented, the various tricks you can do with the camera, that the narrative kind of falls by the wayside, and it's just kind of there as a loose string on which to string the pearls, like that narrative thread, which is usually like the backbone of a movie, is as thin as that string for the pearls.
Right.
It's funny that you mentioned that. I gotta confess to you guys, I'm kind of cheating on my own show. Because for the spoiler room, Mark Krawczyk's show every week, this week we're going to be talking about Brian De Palma's Dress to Kill.
Oh,
so
why am I not on that show?
You want to be? I could possibly hook you up. But no. So I'm
not on that show.
I love that movie.
Yeah,
well, I talked to, I watched Strange Color of Your Body's Tears, and then immediately, I think it was like, okay, it was the next day, I started watching Dress to Kill. So that was this morning. I'm halfway through it, so I, have not gotten the full experience of it.
Have you seen it before?
No.
Oh my gosh. That's awesome. Okay, cool.
Seriously?
So,
wow.
That's great.
Yeah. But the thing is, like, I'm watching it and I can totally see the De Palma connection, except that, yes, De Palma does these great visuals, and I can see a lot of that in what Cattet and Forzani have done in, Strange Color. But yeah, it really does need to have that narrative thread to hang its hat on, because I was really, really into the Strange Color of Your Body's Tears for about the first probably 30 minutes. Because and I was sitting there thinking, and this is true all the way throughout, I was like, even though I didn't like the movie on balance, like after it was over, I felt like I had run this mental marathon of like, how close can I get to turning this thing off without actually turning it off? But I wished that I'd seen it in a theater, because some of these visuals, particularly towards the end, there's a slow motion shot of a woman getting shot in the head that is just this great slow motion of ruby red blood and flying hair and glittering glass. I think it floored me. But after that 30-minute mark initially, I'm like, okay, so this entire thing is going to be a weird POV dream sequence. I'm fine with it as being a spice or being a bit of punctuation, but this thing was all run-on sentence and no punctuation, and I lost patience with it. I had to get up and go do some errand, I think, and so I wasn't able to finish the last 20 minutes until later, and I was so thankful, because by the time I got back to finishing this movie, I rented it on Amazon or whatever, I was just kind of done. I was like, okay, let's get through this, and it made less and less sense as it went on. So I didn't have time to look this up on Wikipedia, as I mentioned. Apparently the entry is empty. So gang, at the 17-minute mark of this live stream, AC, to the best of your abilities, what is this movie about?
So, Brian leaves the room.
Don't you want to know what it's about, Brian?
Brian doesn't care what it's about. It is about a man, Dan Christensen, who is returning from a trip in Frankfurt to his home. I believe he's, they don't say actually where he's at, but I'm guessing it's in Belgium, because everybody speaks they speak French and Flemish, which is the Belgian national languages. But he comes home and he finds that his wife is not only not home, she hasn't picked up any of his messages since he left them. He landed in Frankfurt and has left 4 consecutive messages, and none of them have been picked up. And the chain is locked from the inside, and his wife is gone. And it's kind of like, okay, so there's a mystery already afoot. He calls in the inspector, who, doesn't find anything amiss and says, you're acting suspiciously. And then his landlord also has comments about, like, everybody's complaining about you. What we find is that also these 3 men each have a corresponding woman who is a mystery woman in their life. And we see these kind of we kind of go into different flashbacks or stories or narratives or dreams. As you mentioned, it's not really clear as to what is happening and when, but we do get to examine relationships. And in that regard, I think there's something to be discussed, even if it's not a strong through line. We get these glimpses of how these people interact. Male and male, female and female, and amidst the sexes. Now, that's as kind of bare bones as the script can get. But as we've been alluding to, it is so much about hearing the noises of the leather squeaking. Hearing, like, seeing these red gels and blue gels and green gels. You flash into black and white, you have close-ups of knives, and you follow along the edge, and objects are shown in close-up detail, and everything takes on such import, and it becomes such an exercise in style. And yes, it's style over substance, because the substance is the style in the case here. Like, that's what this movie is about. Look at all the fancy tricks and things that make up what a giallo is. We're going to make them what the movie is. And I think that's what this is. And I think wanting it to be a narrative is understandable, but I think if you come back to it a second time, knowing that you're not going to get that, it's a much more satisfying experience. So that's a roundabout way of answering, do I like this movie? The first time I was super frustrated, much like you, Ian. Second time, I'm like, I actually kind of love this movie. It's the kind of movie that I would love to have on the background of a party, because you're always going to have some amazing visual up. And, I don't think anybody's going to get caught up in watching this movie, but you will definitely be like, that was cool. That was cool. That was cool. That was cool.
Okay, Brian, before you jump in, AC.
No. I was, like when you're hearing a sermon and you're just like, I feel the spirit. Like, that's AC was doing that for me. So.
But no, you said something. I don't know if I would have this on the background of a party that I'd want people to stay at. But in terms of, how you sometimes watch movies with art galleries, like big art shows, and they'll have like a video display up. I could totally see this, projected on a giant white wall, just playing while people are walking around looking.
Well, that's
at
what it
yellow
feels
wall,
like, right?
Ian.
Yeah.
A yellow wall.
No, because then it muddy the colors. I understand, dude. Look, I love that we see the black gloves, but also like the yellow. It didn't even look like yellow rubber gloves. It looked like white gloves that had been left in a car or out in the sun for too long, and they slipped them on while also Vaselining them up or something. It was so gross. But yeah, this thing is enticing. The sound design is off the chain. Visually, it's great. They keep going back to this motif of a stiletto blade, almost like caressing a nipple. And I just, in my mind, I saw it get lopped off, but that never actually happened.
You kept hearing that shing, 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 like that noise of the blade ringing.
Now, I went back to, I don't know if it was Ebert, but some prestigious film critic had made up a movie law or some kind of an observation about how in movies it makes no sense when someone draws out like a machete or a knife. There's always that metal on metal sound, even when you're pulling it out like a leather sheath.
Leather scabbard, yeah.
It's so dumb, but effective. Okay, so Jonas coming back with some comments. Brian, it was a long time since you uploaded a video to your YouTube channel.
Why aren't you on that show, Brian?
What show?
Your own show.
There you go.
Well, I mean, we can discuss Giallo Room stuff later or whatever.
It was a joke, Brian. It was just a joke.
I think that means that Jonas is a fan and he misses you.
And he misses
Yeah,
you.
but that's what I'm saying. Like,
Do you have an announcement to make?
well, there's activity. So
Okay.
yeah. I think that's what he's alluding to.
All right.
In terms of being an editor on this particular show
There's
and
gonna
not
be
the
some
host.
new content coming up soon, I hear.
There you go. All right. Well, let's see. AC, you hit the nail on the headset.
On the headset.
That needs to be no. Okay, I know you corrected it, Jonas, but
Nope, it's headset.
I'm not going to.
Headset's
Yes,
a
It's
thing now.
headset. Yes.
yes, that needs
The
to be. The
t-shirts
new
are
in the
already being
lexicon.
printed. Yes.
Brilliant. Okay, so I understand your point about this not being the kind of movie to go to for a narrative, and maybe this is my fault, especially after having done a show about Giallo for a few years now with you fine folks.
It's been a few years.
It's at least
wow.
2,
2020.
3. Yeah, man. Almost soon to be 4. Wow. But that's my number one thing. I got to have a story. I got to have a narrative. I can even excuse movies that are, primarily more dreamlike, but I just wonder, like, if you are so good at crafting the stories behind these great visuals, all these visuals with the gels and the close-ups and all this other business, that wonderful scene where the one guy is going into the bedroom and he sees the plastic on the ceiling, he's cutting along it and the body falls out. That's a story. That's not just a, hey, wouldn't it be cool if? You have to plot that out, right? So how hard is it to come up with a narrative story that holds everything together? And I understand, like, well, that's not the movie I want to make. Well, okay, then make it 15 minutes, cram all of your visual splendor into that short and be done with it.
Well, okay. See, having just gone through the Scare-a-Thon where I was watching a lot of different kinds of movies, we had an interesting discussion about films like Skinamarink and The Outwaters, where, it's bumping up against what we classify as cinema. Because Skinamarink is clearly it's a movie with an intention. Like every element of it is intentional. And absolutely, that is true here. Like they are making the movie they want to make. Now,
100%.
whether it's the movie that somebody wants to see or not is really up to the audience, and that's cool if it's not for you. But I mean, because I didn't like Skinamarink as a viewer, I was kind of like, this fucking movie. Why can't it be 20 minutes long? Just like you said, Ian. But that's not what this artist is going for. This artist is creating something that is deliberately 100 minutes long when it absolutely could be a 25-minute short and still be as, quote, effective to a mass audience. But they're not catering to that audience. They're catering to an audience that's willing to go further and deeper. And that's what I love about, and I do use the word love. I love the fact that they are making a movie that is defiantly its own thing. It isn't a traditional film, and it's not catering to a traditional audience.
Well, I'll jump in and say it's its own thing of another thing, right? Like I think in my viewing of this movie, I've seen this movie maybe 3 or 4 times now. Couple of those times I might have been inebriated and watching that film with a specific vibe, I'll say, totally different. It takes on like legs, right? It's crazy. However, I liken this film to like like if you go to the Universal Studios and go on one of their theme rides, it's got like everything for somebody that loves these things. But if somebody's never seen, like, say, a Harry Potter movie or whatever, they'll still get like the craziness, the I would say universal like world building expansiveness that one would get if they were a fan already. but you sort of get that in your face. You get that more of a sensical thing, right? Like all the senses are being met. But I'll say that this doesn't necessarily have the soul of what like when
Agreed.
I first watched All the Colors of the Dark, right? That created something, those films back then created a specific genre that people go back to and, replicate or, pull out some elements and make their own thing or whatever. I look at this thing as just, if you love these films, this is a movie that, yes, you play in the background, or you play during like a specific like Giallo event, or you get high and watch the goddamn movie. Like, this movie is specifically for that, for like just sitting down.
Yeah.
Like they're all little vignettes. Like they're all like little specific, like the fucking hat box scene, right?
Oh, the Giallo man crawls out of the hat box and it's all black and white.
Fucking amazing. Yeah, like it's just,
it is
for somebody that has seen countless of these movies of this specific genre and just fell in love with all the delight that you can glean from this genre. When I first watched this movie, it was like, holy shit, like somebody's been paying attention to what I love from these movies,
Yeah.
So I view it like that. I'm not trying to dig like a cohesive story. Like, sure, there's a guy that comes home, he's missing his lover. He's trying to go to each apartment, and during so he's learning a little bit of each, family or whomever that lives at certain apartments. And then an inspector shows up, and we're trying to like figure out this mystery. So yeah, there are things there for people that do want to rationalize this movie and try to make some sense out of it.
Well, but I think that's sort of my frustration is, if you want to present it as this is a hour and 45-minute fever dream homage to Giallo, and there's no story, it's all visuals, I'm like, cool. But my expectation is, because you are setting up a story, like the first 20-30 minutes of this movie does make absolute sense, and it promises a mystery that by the end we're like, who the hell's Laura? Like, there's this white room with the girl is bleeding down the leg, and the boy is kind of like in the background. I had flashbacks to Dr. Chenard from Hellraiser 2. Like, I don't know what's going on here, and I don't care, but I cared in the beginning, and that's the frustration that I had. I like what you're saying about these being little vignettes. I almost want to buy the Blu-ray and treat this as like the chapter menus. Like, each chapter menu is a different short film that you can watch. It's just hour 45 minutes of like 18 short films.
So you're the host of the show, Ian.
Thank you.
I'm going to pull my instructor card, okay? Because I feel like Dr. AC, myself, Mr. Kitley, we're professors. You're the student, right? You're
not going to kick me out, are you?
Hold on. I'm going to sit you in your chair, and I'm going to tell you that actually, no, I was actually psyched for you to watch this movie, because I looked at this as sort of a break kind of a movie from like, sitting down and really taking notes and really trying to like discuss a film for like, what it's set up back then or whatever. Like, for example, like if we sat down and watched, what have you done to Solange, right? That movie specifically, we're on this like thing, we're on this like path, this you from A to Z.
It's about the narrative.
Exactly. This one, it's more of a like here. I wasn't gonna pull this out, but you're making me do this. Okay, you're making me.
It's a family-friendly live stream, Brian.
These are Italian butter cookies. My favorite. Okay. But if you look, it's an explosion of all different types of shit. It's overdone, it's crazy, but they're goddamn delicious. And that's what this movie is. It's an Italian goddamn butter cookie fiesta. Okay.
I'm sorry you had to bring that out, Brian. I mean, I understand that Ian was provoking you, and
No, but we did
enjoy
listen.
This, Ian. For what it is, you have to sit down and enjoy. Like, this is like somebody like a bukkake of Italian giallo in your face. You know what I mean? It's beautiful.
It's not for everybody.
It's not.
And I can
Okay.
tell you right now that is not for everybody.
Listen, but Brian, whenever they do the 4K re-release of this movie, your quote is going to be on that box.
Yep.
It's a goddamn Italian butter cookie explosion.
Fiesta. I don't know. But
Fiesta. Okay, but here's the thing: the difference between this movie and your assortment of delicious cookies is that you're not going to ask me to sit there and just like look at each cookie for an hour and 45 minutes.
But guess
right?
who does that? This guy.
I hope you'd be eating them at least, but you know.
But like, look, I'm being goddamn for real here. Okay, when you look at this thing, right? Somebody constructed that. Somebody took the time and made like the little ridges, and then put the little glitter or whatever, and then the little delicious cherry right there, and it's a delicious cookie.
But imagine
these two directors love them some Italian giallo. They goddamn love it, and they made a film decorated with everything that you would love from the genre, from both points of views, from a woman and a man. Like it's such a.
They are a husband and wife team, by the way.
Yes,
I would rather watch a documentary about them making this movie together and all the conversations around it than that. But I see your cookie analogy, sir, and I raise you. Okay, now imagine that delicate little cookie with the swirls and the glitter and the gelato or whatever is in the middle of it. Imagine, okay, the point of it is an artisanal thing, right? But it's still a cookie. So if you pop that thing in your mouth and it tastes like literal dog shit, you're going to be like, well, this isn't really enjoyable anymore. I don't know if this is actually a cookie. Right?
Okay, but it's not dog shit. So
no, but what I'm saying is the cookie's going to taste great. So you're like, oh, this fulfilled everything I wanted it to be in a cookie. Now, Kitley, if he were here, he would probably yell at me for the umpteenth time, be like, why do you keep coming to these movies expecting a coherent story?
Well, yes. Thank you for channeling Mr. Kitley.
Yes. Yeah. I felt like he was here.
But yeah, it's like, I kept thinking, this is like if the Calvin Klein ads from the 90s, those weird black and white, doesn't make any sense. And at the end, it's like, buy our cologne. This is like if Calvin Klein commercial directors made a Gaspar Noé film. But Gaspar Noé at least has some great stories, underpinning his crazy narratives. I mean, at the end of Enter the Void, you actually see the narrator watching his own conception as a giant penis pumps in and out of a fake vagina. It's one of the most amazing special effects I've ever seen. And narratively, it also blows my mind.
It blows your mind.
It did. And a load at the same time. The climax of that movie is amazing.
This has to be a snippet, like one of
All
those YouTube short things that
no,
edit it right here.
no, thank you. But the point is, I'm watching this movie, and there are some visuals that I wish I could hang on a great story. There's I would say a life-changing sequence. There's a couple of them involving our protagonist having his face taken off. And also like this stiletto, coming in from the back of his head and coming out of his mouth. I'm like, I hate to bring up Hellraiser again, but these people need to make a damn Hellraiser movie. There's this great visual of, I'm going to say it because it's in the movie, but a recurring motif of labia that just, it's fat and it's red and it's gross and it's meant to be a provocative image. But I'm like, yes, you put this in a Hellraiser movie now, it's gonna skirt that line between like French horrific art house and what's acceptable in the mainstream. And I found myself thinking about those possibilities while I was supposed to be watching a story and getting engaged in it.
When you're watching this, also, I mean that the reference from Fulcio's house by the cemetery where the blade's coming through the mouth. We have the maggots, that show up. I mean, I feel like this is not just a love letter to Giallo, although it's certainly leaning in that direction. It's kind of a love letter to Italian horror. And I think I'm curious, Ian, like, having, again, understanding your frustration with its lack of cohesive storyline and the fact that it is kind of like bait and switch you in that it's a mystery. His wife is missing. The door's locked from the inside. Oh my gosh. That seems like a great mystery to unravel. and we don't necessarily unravel it. And I will say that most gialli do. They take the time to actually, at least circle back around. They may not tie up all the loose ends, but they at least bring you back around and find out who killed who or what the main mystery was. They resolve that. And that doesn't happen here. It does kind of like devolve into like a weird tenebrae type of thing where you're kind of like, who, that woman on the beach, what was that all about?
Yep.
That said, I wonder if you watch it again, knowing the film that it is, if you wouldn't be able to appreciate it differently, if not more. Like I think coming at it from that viewpoint of, okay, now I know what that cookie does taste like. It doesn't taste like the Oreo that I'm used to. It tastes like something completely different. And I wonder what that experience will be like for you.
Here's the thing. My answer is no, because you guys have watched this movie a few times between you, and you still can't tell me what it's about. Beyond that 30-minute premise, right? I mean, AC, you start off by saying it kind of explores, or at least pretends to explore, these relationship dynamics between these people in his apartment building. Yeah. But as far as like, okay, that end sequence, what does that mean? What's the significance of the apartment number or floor number 7 getting turned around upside down? And it turns out to be an L for Laura, and there's the book, the photo book of Laura with the Barbara, who's a tenant, with the missing wife, and a whole bunch of other black and white portraits of random women we haven't seen before. This is all stuff that I'm looking at. I'm like, I want to know what the significance of this is about. And when you tell me that you go to Wikipedia and there's no synopsis for this, maybe I need to dig deeper into the internet. Maybe people have written about this. Maybe the filmmakers have talked about it.
There's
but aren't the filmmakers inherently asking you to step in and meet them?
Too much. That's several bridges too far.
Okay.
Because like, here's the thing. If I could find out, I'm totally willing to, if someone out there is watching this and wants to put in the comments like a link to a great essay or a site or something, a reason to revisit, I don't need full spoilers. I just need to know that there is a story and maybe a hint of where, like what that is, what I should look for going back to say, okay, here's how it all makes sense. And these are the kind of through lines to pay attention to, because by the end of the film, I felt like there were all these cookie crumbs. But at the end, I was like, I don't know if I'm not smart enough to get this. I know I'm smart, but what am I missing here? It's my first time through. But I also had this sneaking feeling that they were making art for art's sake. And that's not necessarily a bad thing, unless you tease me at the beginning by saying this is going to be a really cool mystery. There was a detail that I picked up right away. There were 4 messages on the answering machine, and he only listened to 3 of them. I'm like, did it cut off at the?
He listens to 4.
I thought he listened to 3.
No,
okay,
there's 4.
Then I missed something there.
Okay.
Maybe they ran into each other. I don't know.
Because the 4th one is him saying he just that was him just having landed.
Yeah, I picked up on that, but I only heard like paid attention to 3, I guess. But the whole point is, it's kind of like you watch any movie that you don't understand. Then you talk to someone like, oh no, you got to watch out for this and this and this. There's this symbolism and it kind of represents that. You go back and you watch like, oh, I get it now. That's incredible.
Right.
But when you're talking about an hour and 45-minute commitment, and there's no guarantee that I'll come out on the other side of it with any more answers than I went into it with, maybe just an appreciation of like, oh, this really was just meant to be, a visual experiment. I know that after watching it once. So
but I don't think it is intended to be just a visual experiment. I do think that Bruce and Hélène have a story, and they are deliberately obscuring certain things because they're looking to have you step in. And what you're talking about, like, I mean, how many things like James Joyce's Ulysses, where you're just like, this is impenetrable. I don't understand how this is a classic. But then some professor or some essayist kind of like threads their way through it for you, and you go
penetrates, right?
And go, oh wow, that is actually what you did there was pretty incredible. But you're right. I mean, it would require Brian or I to be able to go, did you notice this? Did you notice this? Did you notice this? Did you notice this? and I have to say, I didn't come prepared to do that, but I'm willing, as with any good essay, you're going to be like, here's, you're going to start signposting, and you will make your narrative for yourself.
Well, here's the thing. I don't want to make a narrative for myself unless that's specifically what the filmmaker set out to do. And I contend that in the beginning parts of this movie, they're telling me they have a story to tell, and they're inviting me in that sense to watch a story. Now, if in the middle of a story that I'm telling you about, hey guys, I watched this great movie, and it was really amazing. I had these great visuals, and then I went to the grocery store, and then on the way back, I dropped off my kids at the playground. And did you know that I'm making spaghetti this week? And I took this amazing French class when I was in the 7th grade. It changed my life. I never got to Paris, but you know, that one time where I met the guy with the polar bear at the ice cream stand. Oh my God, you guys. Now, I want to get back to what I was talking about, this amazing movie. You know, the visuals were on point. The score was just phenomenal. But, you know, my mom never really loved me that much. And I think, you know, coming up, I was like, why can't I fly an airplane? What am I supposed to make
Dude,
of it?
I was just entranced by your story.
By the way, my mom did love me very much.
I'm glad.
But that's the whole thing. Like, if you guys were coming on this show and saying the keys are all there, you just have to, without, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but go back and watch it, and you will come out with the answer if you know that it's not, you know, on the surface, it's not, you know, something that they're going to hold your hand. But after the second viewing, you're totally going to be like knocked out by this movie. But that's not the conversation we're having. You're telling me that even on a second viewing, if I understand you, I'm still going to have to dig. And I'm sorry, this movie is not worth that.
But I would say, like, Paul Thomas Anderson's The Master is like that. That you have to be able
Great
to dig.
movie.
No,
Great movie, by the way.
But I'm just saying, like, it's all the answers are not there. You have to be willing to do some of the work.
I almost burned down the venue at which I saw The Master. When I saw The Master, I love that theater.
Because it didn't give you all the answers, or why?
Because I don't think it's a real movie. But anyway,
do you think this is a real movie?
I love Paul Thomas. They could show The Master and The Strange Color of Your Body's Tears on a double feature. I would be not surprised. But I would also say, if you're looking to test out new drone technology, there's your venue. Anyhow, sorry, Brian, go ahead.
Brian?
Well, no, it's funny because, like, when you do this, you see Jaretta, and then you don't see Jaretta.
Yeah.
Jaretta? Okay.
I don't have that.
No, like, so, okay, let's, like, stop the bus right here, okay? Get up and check on the kids.
We haven't even gotten to school yet? What? No, okay, sorry.
No, because, like, I'm sure, like, you watch this film and you talk to the, you know, the filmmakers, they're going to give you their interpretation of what they believe their story making is, like, from point A to point Z. I'm sure they have it all figured out. I'm sure for one of them, maybe it's a point of view.
As intentional as this movie is, they have to.
Right. You know, I'm sure they have their own threads. I just don't think that they were overly concerned with explaining to you, the viewer, what their threads were specifically. Now, they're there, I'm sure. Like, if you sit down and watch, you know, you'll see a businessman that comes home, and you know, maybe he doesn't have you know, a companion, and maybe it was all in his head. Maybe he's suffering.
I thought that when he's on the plane and he's asleep, and I'm kind of like, oh. Huh.
Right. And I appreciate that it does that for you. Like, sometimes I just want to sit back and just get lost in something, you know, and that's what this does for me. But it does it in such a way where I'm lost, but I'm very familiar with all these different elements that I'm lost in. And I'm enjoying running around and, you know, discovering this new thing that's going to lead me to this. And then that's going to lead me to this. And, oh my God, maybe the landlord is the killer of all these people.
I love that Ian hasn't even bothered to throw up the spoilers banner. It's like, you can't spoil this movie.
You can't spoil the fun.
You can't spoil a movie that is indecipherable, guys.
You know, and then you pick up things along the way, like there are, like, very intentional commentaries on, you know, female versus male and vice versa, and the androgyny that you kind of get lost in when you mix the two genders together. You know, there's a scene where, God, there's so many crazy scenes, but there's a scene where the killer is coming from the inside of the body, almost like in Nightmare on Elm Street 2,
Mm.
you know, when he's popping out of Jesse or whatever,
Mhm.
the killer is coming out of the individual. Like you see, like the hand underneath the skin, right, and then it rips through. Like it's playing along with like penetration, and you know, there's ways that, you know, like a man is drilling a hole into a ceiling to try to figure out what, like, why does he have to keep, you know, sticking things in holes, or, you know, like the blade, it's very, you know, penetrable. There's a lot of elements with that, but they're playing with, you know, sometimes the male gaze, sometimes they're playing from the female point of view, and I appreciate that because, you know, oftentimes when you go back to the older Giallo films of, you know, especially the golden era, it's all very male driven, you know, and it's a very, yes, like they're playing along with both genders, but it's, at the end of the day, it's a male creating the story, where I appreciate the two points of views from here, because I really get lost. Like I sometimes get lost with, like, is the male filmmaker trying to, you know, make up for some of his inadequacies and the ways that he looks at females, and vice versa. And it's just like an explosion of all these different crazy elements that I could sit down and really just get lost in and think about, you know. So I appreciate those elements in this film. Maybe I'm looking into it too deep, but I don't necessarily have to get chained into like like an actual narrative, right? Like I think there is a narrative. I just don't think that it's front and center. Like when you watch, you know, Suspiria, for example, it's not the strongest narrative in the world, right? It's basically, it's getting you from point A to point B to point C, and that's pretty much it. But the way that he does it is just so expansive, and so you get lost in its world, you know.
Suspiria is a good parallel, because that's a movie that I famously, you know, hated the first time I saw it. And now I appreciate it on several different levels. But at the end of Suspiria, I was like, okay, this, I know Argento is trying to, you know, get a lot of different, you know, points across when he's, you know, visually and also narratively, and some things don't make sense. It gets all dreamlike, but, you know, on subsequent viewing, it's like, of course, because our protagonist starts out at a dance school, which turns out to be a portal into, you know, into hell where nothing makes sense. But I can at least walk away saying, yes, I understand where the story ends. I understand where it begins and ends. The middle, I need to go back and pay a bit more attention.
Didn't you like the
Here,
remake better?
I
This is
did.
fair. See,
Yeah, but
okay.
yeah,
No further
but
questions, Your Honor.
Oh my goodness.
I appreciate, well, I appreciate them on, you know, I appreciate them both as, I love them both for different reasons. But with
But
this,
you like the remake because it explains further, right? Like it
no, I mean,
actually.
the remake is very different. I mean, in
Yeah.
terms of, you know, what it explores and how it explores it. I think they're both great films. I just happen to like the remake more because it was, and this is my own personal bias, it's more of what I wished Argento had done with his version of it. I understand some of that is because he made his in the 70s and this one came out in the 2000s. So that, you know, I'm sure that Guadagnino, I think, was the director of that.
Yeah.
He probably had learned a lot from Suspiria and the imitators and the genre over the decades that, you know, Argento was inventing this stuff back then. So it's not fair. However, with this movie, I feel like he could play 52 card pickup with the scenes, you know, after the 30-minute mark, because it's all random visual splendor without, I'm sorry, I understand what you're saying, Brian, about the male gaze, the female gaze. I don't care about any of that, because I don't see how it matters to the story that's being told here. If it turns out that the wife was the killer or the perpetrator or something, and that those gender dynamics kind of, you know, playing with them meant something to the narrative, that'd be fine. But as far as the visual, like, oh, we're going to show a stiletto going in between these two wide open, you know, women's spread legs, I've seen that in other movies, and in those other movies it meant something to the story.
Exactly.
Here it's just homage,
That's
which
exactly the point.
Well,
yeah, and that's fine. Homage is sort of the point of this film, but in terms of like, what about the deeper meaning? I'm like, it doesn't have any deeper meaning in this context. It did in other contexts. That's what I would argue.
what you just were talking about, there are repeating images, repeating motifs, And I think that's a very intentional thing. The fact that he has to break into his own apartment time and time again, that he has to break the chain. And I mean, I'm like, that's clearly a metaphor. But I'm not going to say I know what it is, but again, I haven't gone that far yet.
Yeah.
But I mean, that is clearly a metaphor. The blade going between the legs, clearly a metaphor. The knife going off the nipple, clear. I mean, it's like when you repeat something that much, that often, like you've already done a very striking image, you don't need to do it over and over again unless it's intentional.
Can you
so-
repeat that?
but
Can you
that-
repeat that slower, AC? Just like
Which one?
the nipple
Brian,
one, and then
As long as you put both hands up, Brian.
But I think that's where I go. There is something here. And I think it's ironic that, our Gialli started as paperback novels where the narrative was everything, that it wasn't about style. And now it's turned completely around the other way with this film, where it is so much about the visual storytelling and not about a mystery that intertwines characters and things like that.
Can I just say, like, I wish we spent the entirety of this episode. Like, I was actually ready to just like dig into the visuals and like how stunning this was, and then like my notes actually consisted of like, oh my god, the sequence with the fucking hat box, and it was just all that stuff. And like I think we spent the entirety of this episode trying to decipher what the movie was actually about, and I think it's unfortunate because I think that this is the kind of movie where like you do all the work, and you do like throughout the all year, like we're watching all these cool movies and we're trying to figure out who the killer was and why she did this, and the reasoning for him doing this is because of his childhood or whatever. And this movie comes out, and somebody, I don't know who it was, to like just throw it out there and be like, hey, let's talk about this one. When it was mentioned, I was like, oh, like I haven't seen that in a couple of years. I want to jump back and like enjoy it for what it is, kind of thing. And that's precisely what I did. And then jumping in here, it was like, okay, like let's talk about this, like these goddamn Italian cookies. and here we are discussing.
You didn't spill them, did you?
No.
Oh, okay. That would have been a shame. No, I understand your point, Brian. And I think, if this episode has served anybody out there who's, hasn't heard of this film or has heard
Jonas
of it,
is just like, you fucking.
Hey, I'm willing to take those slings and arrows, but I think that if this has done anything, maybe it's a warning to approach this film, if you've only heard about it, to watch it without that expectation of it making a whole lot of sense, at least on first viewing. And I think that not talking about a lot of we've talked about some of the visual things in here, but I think one of the pleasures, one of the only pleasures perhaps of this film, is being surprised by like, oh my God, that's beautiful. That's amazing. That knife wound in the top of the head that keeps as a recurring motif, that also has the same, I think, placement in the frame as many of these swollen labia motifs that we get like later on. Like, what does that mean? I have no idea, but it looks cool. So yeah, I'm sorry we didn't get to talk about all that, Brian, but I do want to pose a question to the two of you because you brought it up a second ago, sir. Brian, who is the killer in this movie and why are they murdering people?
I think it's the landlord. I think the landlord did it.
You don't think it's Dora?
Who's Dora?
Dora is his assistant who shows up in his bed at the end. The older woman.
That's his assistant. I thought that was the lady from upstairs.
No, it's not. He calls her, although we don't see the woman upstairs, so maybe it is Dora. Maybe Dora does live upstairs. Again, but he calls Dora and says, hey, cancel my appointments for the rest of the next couple of days because I'm going to be home. And turns out, like she says, I could come over and see you. And you get you learn that they had a relationship 20 years prior.
Mm-hmm.
And she's clearly older than him. I get the image.
I remember that. And that's why I thought he was.
She's the older girl that's having the blood running down her legs, and he's the younger boy watching it.
Maybe he is Dora.
I thought that was Laura.
Well, that's the question. And also, are Laura and Barbara the same person? That was the other question I had. And I wanted to ask you guys. You know, Barbara, the naked woman he meets up on the roof.
Mm-hmm.
Is that Laura?
No, I think that's Barbara because she keeps showing up throughout the.
Right, but I wasn't sure if she was like if
I
Barbara was Laura.
Right.
And I don't know. And again, I'm like, I'll watch this movie again. I'll dig deeper. I don't mind.
Okay, AC, even though you're my teacher, I'm giving you homework. I want not anytime soon because I know you're just coming off of spooky season, and all that business. But at some point, I would like you to watch this movie again and write back. And again, you don't have to spoil it for me. You just got to tell me, watch this movie again. Maybe look out for one.
All I could tell you is here's what I think. Here's
right. I don't even want to know what you think until we'll have a separate conversation, not necessarily on this show, but just at some point where I want you to come back to me and say, I watched it for the fourth time or whatever, third time, and now I get it. Here are 2 things to look out for. I'm not going to spoil anything else, but if you pay attention to these 2 elements, it's all going to make sense. I'll watch the movie and then we'll talk about it. And I'm perfectly willing to come back, even on this show at some point in the future, and just say, hey, guys, brief postscript to our colors of the moon or wind or whatever the hell we're talking, body's tears. I get it now, and I apologize for that episode. I'm deleting it from the internet.
So if I may, I'd like to read my capsule review. It's just a couple sentences from 2014, which is when I saw it the first time. Some people dream in black and white, some in color, and some in giallo. A grand experiment similar to the couple's previous effort, Amer, that is considerably style over substance, generating a sense of appreciation without necessarily entertaining. I'd love to see them make an actual movie someday instead of these extended formal experiments, but maybe that's not what they're interested in. So that was my takeaway 9 years ago, which sounds very similar to where you're at now.
We could have done that at the beginning of the show. And that's
why I was
minutes ago.
And that's why I was asking you if perhaps coming back around to it, because I really didn't know what my takeaway was going to be this time around. I thought maybe it's just going to be one more where I go, Jesus Christ, if I see one more green gel, I'm going to lose my fucking mind.
Right.
But that wasn't what I had this time. This time I was like, I know what movie I'm in for. And I was able to actually see a layer deeper. Whereas I very much was at the surface level the first time around, just like going, wow, how much more jolly flavored masturbating do we have to do? But watching it this time, it's kind of like, oh, this is actually, and there's actually, and oh, there's metaphor and.
Damn it. You're going to make me.
And I hang on to what I said, like all the way in the beginning.
Are you frozen?
Ryan.
Am I still here?
Yes, you're still here, but you were freezing a little bit. Keep going.
Yeah.
Am I still here?
Yep.
Yeah, you're good now. Yeah.
Did I come back up?
Yeah.
No, I was so okay. So I was just gonna say, like I still hold on to saying like this is like a Giallo theme park of like, you know, for somebody that like has seen all the great, you know, classics and all the ones that you know, the masters have made and put out there and they're looked at as legends or whatever. This is aping off a lot of that stuff. And I shouldn't say aping, but more so like paying beautiful homage from people that truly love the genre. It's nothing like, oh, I'm not ripping this off. I'm not ripping, but you'll see like the occasional, you know, shattered glass over the naked skin from, you know, Strange Vice.
Oh my God. Yes.
Like you'll see stuff that you've seen before previously, but just done really exquisitely and really with care and beauty, you know?
Yeah. So. And I cannot fault this movie on the performances, which we didn't really talk about, but I think they're, even though I understand the motives of the
our main guy he reminded me so much of Ivan Ramas. What's his name? Rasimov.
Oh, yeah. Rasimov.
He has such a great face.
Yeah.
Wonderful faces throughout this movie. But yeah, I wish they had taken everything about Giallo that they loved and ignored that part about, well, it doesn't have to make sense because it's Giallo.
Right.
But damn it, AC, because you read that wonderful capsule.
Take 10 years.
Well, you wrote that beautiful capsule, which made me wonder, because I'm totally in agreement with 2014 AC, if maybe I need to be a little kinder to this and give it a rewatch. But yes, I'm going to give it some time to breathe. But hey, before we go,
Yes.
do you have the final tally for the Scare-a-Thon, or are you still calculating that?
Oh, thank you. Yes, the link will stay active for the next couple weeks.
Okay.
But as of right now, we're over $6,600, which is the most we've ever raised. So thank everybody who contributed. It is deeply appreciated. Thanks to everybody I'll be sending out a massive, email to everybody who participated on the panels. But it was a wonderful October, and I appreciate everybody being a part of it. So thank you.
Excellent. Well, congratulations, man. That was a lot of hard work you put into there, and yeah, I'm glad that I could be on some shows with you.
Well,
and
thanks for
help
mentioning
promote
it.
this.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we're gonna get out of here. I don't know if we have a show planned for December, because that's gonna be the last show of the year. But I think I may have thrown out the challenge at some point. Is there a Christmas themed Giallo that we could talk about, or a holiday themed Giallo? You don't have to answer on the spot, but I do want to open it up to folks out there who are watching this either now or in the future. Is there a film that you would like to see us close out 2023 with, this batshit crazy year? And yeah, we'll open up the floor. Oh, Brian, what do you got?
Just real quick, we're back in the Giallo room. We're doing stuff. We released a new video that's on Instagram for Jalloween. And then we're actually releasing a follow-up to this show here, talking about the strange color of your body's tears. But it won't be us. It'll be an actual Italian murderer who actually probably has this movie on in the background when he's doing some salacious.
Does he live in a hat box?
Probably. Actually,
and can he tell us who the killer is in this movie and what did he want? But no, that's
anyway.
great. So when is that coming out?
That'll be released later this evening. It's actually still being edited as we speak. But the point is, the Giallo room is sort of back for now.
Yay!
It's mostly on Instagram, although I will be uploading some stuff into YouTube eventually. But
cool.
Yeah.
Well, I will drop a link to that once it goes live down the description of this show, so folks can check it out. Definitely. Congratulations, sir. Congrats all around.
I know you want to wrap up, Ian, but I also want to just throw out a shout out for this for Bruce and Helene's follow-up, Let the Corpses Tan.
Oh yes,
because it's not a Giallo. It's a kind of like an homage to spaghetti westerns, but it's that same kind of like, it's like taking the aesthetic of Strange Color Your Body's Tears and applying it to spaghetti westerns, and it's just kind of incredible.
Yeah.
And there's certainly more of a narrative to be followed there, but anyway, just throwing that out there.
Well, sometime next year, we're going to find an excuse to talk about that movie in some context, because that sounds phenomenal. All right. Well, thank you guys very much for your patience, for your vigorous defense of this movie. Certainly not in all qualities, but at least in terms of making it something that people should give a chance to, unlike me. I think people should watch it. They just have to have their expectations level set wherever that is, going down, down, down.
Just
anyway,
it doesn't even have to be low, just different.
Yeah, different. That's a good way of putting it. Anyway, I am Ian Simmons of Kicking the Seat. We have Aaron Christensen of Horror 101 with Dr. AC and Brian Martinez of the Giallo Room, which is coming back, everybody. It is back. Awesome. This has been Accademia Giallo for November 2023. Join us next month when we'll be talking about something, and that might even be a movie that you suggest. So put it down in the comments, and we'll take a gander. If you like this live stream, please like and subscribe and ring the bell for notifications. Be sure and support all of our lovely academicians here, including Mr. Kitley, who could not be here.
Yes.
And Mr. Blake Ficara, who could also not be here. But yeah, we will see you back next month. Thank you very much. Take care. And until then, class dismissed.